Hi, I'm Vesna. My sister's engagement party cost over $300,000 at my resort, and when she saw me standing there, she told security, "Kick that beggar out." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, they booked it without asking, used my name to fund it, and never even listed me on the guest list. I gave them the floor, brick by brick, and they still called me the problem. So I have to ask, what happens when the one who pays for everything finally stops paying? I noticed it while reviewing the weekly resort schedule over my second cup of coffee. A high-profile event had been quietly slotted onto the Somerset Haven calendar, Ren Sloan Engagement Celebration. The name punched the air out of my lungs. Dahlia's engagement? Here? I hadn't approved the booking. I hadn't even been told about the engagement, let alone that it would be hosted at my resort. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, waiting for the line item to disappear like some kind of clerical hallucination. It didn't. I refreshed the tab, still there. I dialed Ina, my operations lead, without even blinking. "Did you know about this Ren Sloan engagement booking?" There was a short pause. Then her voice came through, calm and matter-of-fact like always. "It was submitted through an outside planner. Booking was confirmed by Marcine Wren." Marcine, my mother. I felt my jaw tighten. And nobody thought to check that with ownership before slapping a six-figure celebration on our calendar? She wrote in the notes, "Our family has long-standing ties to the property." I exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers to my temples. Sure, as long-standing as pretending the owner's not your daughter. After the call, I sat for a long time. The fog outside the window hadn't lifted, casting soft shadows across the resort's pristine lawns. I remembered the months it took me to fund the renovation of the ballroom they'd just booked behind my back. The hours I spent picking out lighting fixtures by hand. Dahlia never once asked about my business. Not once. I opened my mailbox on the way out of the office later that morning. No invitation, no envelope, nothing. Out of habit, I unlocked my phone and opened Instagram. That was where I found out about her engagement. A reel of her fiancé getting down on one knee on a yacht, followed by a carousel of airbrushed selfies with captions like, "He said forever." One of the photos showed her standing in front of the Somerset ballroom. I stared at the screen until it went dark in my hand. The next morning, I took the long path from the main lobby to the event wing. It was still early, too early for bridal parties to be fussing with makeup or camera crews. The hallway smelled like floor polish and gardenias. I liked it better this way. Untouched, silent. Inside the ballroom, two staff members were arranging chairs. I kept my distance and circled the perimeter, checking lighting. One of the guests must have slipped in early, tall, well-dressed, holding a coffee with too much foam. He smiled at me casually. "Oh hey, are you one of the cleaning staff from their last venue? You look familiar." They must have brought over their usuals. I stared at him for a second too long, then forced a polite smile. "Something like that." He nodded and walked off. I stood there, hands tucked into the pockets of my slacks, watching him disappear into the hallway. I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him my name was the one on the deed. In the corner of the room, Dahlia's voice rang out in laughter. She hadn't seen me. Or maybe she had and chose not to. Either way, she didn't stop the joke. The rest of the bridal party fluttered around her like accessories. I stepped out and headed toward the loading dock. A few catering staff were talking with the planner. I didn't intend to eavesdrop. It just happened. One of them asked, "Should we be limiting staff access during rehearsal?" The planner said without hesitation, "Bride's family asked for minimal interference. No outsiders, just house staff, no surprises." No outsiders, no surprises. That was when I understood. They hadn't forgotten I existed. They just preferred the version of this day where I didn't. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my suite with a glass of sparkling water and the guest list open on my laptop. My name wasn't anywhere. Not even as event sponsor, not as family, not even as a courtesy mention. They wanted my building, my lighting, my brand, but not my presence. I shut the laptop. My hand hovered over the glass, then pulled back. This place was mine. Brick by brick, name by name, policy by policy. They booked it like it was just another venue in their pocket. Like I was the outsider. Like I didn't exist. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger, not even sadness. My body just refused to rest, as if it knew I'd been erased and didn't want to miss the next move. Around 6:30, I finally got out of bed, showered, dressed in my usual black work slacks and polo, and walked down to the event wing under the pretense of doing a safety walkthrough. The staff were already buzzing, hauling in floral crates, unfolding linen, fine-tuning uplighting. Dahlia's wedding planner barked orders into a headset like she was directing a Broadway premiere. I stayed to the edges, checking sconce outlets and escape routes, things no one noticed until they failed. Then I saw it. Behind the check-in table, partially covered by a clipboard, the printed guest list. Color-coded, indexed, alphabetized. I scanned it. My name wasn't there. Not under family, not under vendors, not under acknowledgments. I stood still for a beat too long, like maybe the paper would change if I stared hard enough. The coordinator leaned over and shifted the clipboard, smiling without recognizing me. "You need something, miss?" "Just passing through," I said, and turned back toward the ballroom entrance. The doors had been flung open, letting the morning breeze in, along with the ego of the hour. Dahlia arrived in a white jumpsuit that probably cost more than my first car. Her fiancé trailed behind her, a living mannequin in expensive loafers. Cameramen circled them like satellites. She posed mid-laugh, chin tilted, eyes trained on her reflection in someone else's sunglasses. I ducked behind the side AV station to check the sound system before the rehearsal playlist was loaded. It was routine, muscle memory, but the moment I stood up and turned toward the middle aisle, I froze. Dahlia was looking directly at me. Or maybe through me. Her smile dropped. Then, still in front of cameras, she raised her voice and pointed. "Who let that woman in? She's messing up the frame." A few heads turned. She added, louder now, to one of the security guys who was halfway through adjusting a spotlight. "Get her out of here. Seriously, kick that beggar out before she ruins the aesthetic." No one laughed. The silence hit before the words did. I didn't flinch. I didn't say anything. I just looked over at the young man she'd barked at. Ryan, barely 22, first season at the resort. He stared at me like his brain was trying to catch up with his ears. I gave him a short nod. "It's all right." He didn't move. But I did. I walked out slowly, every step measured, every eye like a pinprick on my back. No one stopped me. No one said a word, not even her. Through the side hallway, I slipped into the kitchen exit, tablet still clutched against my side. The service corridor opened up into the back garden. Someone was testing the bistro lights. They flickered overhead as I stood under them, breathing hard but soundless. "They don't even know whose lights these are," I said out loud. Not to anyone, not even to myself, just to whatever was left of the truth hanging in the air. A few feet away, a staffer finished connecting the outdoor speakers. She glanced at me, then back at her task. No one recognized me here. Not as the owner, not even as the one footing the bill. Just another background figure in black. I stayed there a few more minutes, long enough to hear laughter echoing back through the walls. Laughter that made no space for me. Laughter that felt like it came from a world I'd never belonged to, even when I was paying for the door. By the time I returned to my office, my hands had steadied. The tremor was gone. So was the silence in my chest. I'd felt invisible plenty of times. This was different. This was erasure. I pulled up the guest list again on the screen. Still not there. Still not a single acknowledgement that I existed. They were building a legacy on land I purchased, under chandeliers I selected, with walls I had reinforced with soundproofing so the music wouldn't echo too harshly into the atrium. But me, I was the mistake in the frame. Let them keep planning. The floor they're dancing on. It already has my name on it. I stayed up long after the ballroom lights were turned off, sitting in the dark of my suite with my laptop still open, the same guest list glowing back at me. Everyone was there. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, acquaintances from Dahlia's college sorority, even an old Pilates instructor our mother had seen 3 times. Everyone but me. There was no owner. No hosted by Vesna Calder. No thank you for making this possible. Not even a typo of my name. Just nothing. I closed the screen slowly and set it aside. The wine on the table remained untouched. It had gone flat hours ago, but I hadn't had the appetite for anything. I pulled my phone from the charger and stared at the notifications. Missed calls from earlier in the week, mostly from Mom. No voicemail transcripts popped up. I hadn't opened any of them in months. One by one, I began deleting them. Not because I was angry, but because I realized I already knew what she'd say. The same cadence, the same phrasing. "Hey, sweetheart, haven't heard from you in a while. We know you're busy. We just assumed you'd say yes. You always do." My thumb moved rhythmically, message after message disappearing, until the inbox looked like it had never existed. I stood and walked to the window, the lights from the rehearsal flickering below like fireflies caught in glass. From up here, it looked like a fairy tale. Down there, I knew better. That's when it came back to me. So sharp it felt like someone had pressed play inside my skull. Age 10. Fresno. A Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still in my school uniform, holding a math test with a 94%. I'd been so proud when I got it back. I didn't even wait until dinner to show my mom. She glanced down, smiled faintly, and said, "That's good. Not perfect, but good. Your sister's going to sing at the school recital next week. You should come support her." I remember standing there, holding the paper in both hands, nodding because I didn't know what else to do. My dad, without looking up from his plate, chuckled. "If Vesna isn't too busy playing genius." Nobody meant to be cruel. That's what I told myself for years. They were just being themselves, and I had to learn how to live around it. I pulled away from the window, the memory still lingering like smoke. I grabbed my phone again and opened the family group chat. I rarely looked at it anymore, but there it was, the latest message from my mother, sent to the extended family. "So proud of our Dahlia. She's always been the shining light of the family. Her big day is going to be unforgettable." No mention of me. No note about the resort, the planning, the logistics I'd quietly handled without complaint. And just below that message, another one from her. "Thanks to everyone who helped fund the engagement. Dahlia deserves the very best." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it confirmed something I'd stopped wanting to question. I opened a file I hadn't touched in a while. Family transfers, DuxULSX tuition for Dahlia, paid in full. Credit card balances, cleared twice. Mortgage top-ups for the house, completed. Medical co-pays for Dad's surgery, covered. Event deposit for Mom's Women's Circle brunch, quietly handled. I scrolled down to the bottom, seeing a decade of deposits and transfers, each line a silent "thank you" I never received. "I wasn't the shining light," I whispered, half amused. "I was the power supply." The spreadsheet was facts, no emotion, just numbers. Numbers don't lie, they don't exaggerate, and they certainly don't rewrite history to make someone else the hero. And yet, here I was, cast as a shadow again. But I didn't feel anger, not the loud kind. What settled over me was a kind of stillness, a cold clarity that finally made everything make sense. They didn't hate me. They just loved the version of me that showed up with solutions, stayed quiet, and disappeared after the check cleared. They loved the function, not the person, and that wasn't love. I turned back to my desk and created a new folder. Boundary protocols. Immediate family inside. I began drafting a document. Not legal, personal, Bullet points. No more silent funding. No more last-minute approvals under my name. No more assumptions without explicit consent. No more treating my generosity as default. There was no rage, just resolve. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to say they were sorry for forgetting me, using me, or speaking over me. I just needed them to know I wouldn't allow it anymore. If love only arrives when you pay for it, then maybe it isn't love at all. The next morning, I arrived at the private meeting room behind the main ballroom, with a clipboard in hand and a purpose stitched into my every step. No more sleepwalking through humiliation. No more pretending I didn't see what they were doing, what they'd always done. Vendors were in and out all morning, dropping off invoices and triple-checking timelines. I nodded politely, kept it professional, and made sure no one asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. I didn't owe them anything more than clarity. The banquet layout had been laid out in full-color printouts spread across a table. Each name assigned to a table. Color-coded. Some in bold, some with gold trim around the placards. A touch of vanity, standard for high society events. I scanned the chart. 2 tables for the Sloanes, Thatcher's parents, plus a family friend and his business associate. 1 full row for the Wren relatives. A tucked-away sweetheart table for Dahlia and Thatcher, framed by drapery and orchids. Nowhere, on any page, was I listed. Not even at a backup table with the vendors. Not marked as host. Not even a formality like V. Calder, guest of venue. Nothing. I didn't even exist on the seating plan. I stood there, holding the edge of the table just enough to keep my hands still. If anyone had walked in at that moment, they would have thought I was checking for typos, not realizing I was confirming my own deletion. I left the layout room quietly and headed down the hallway toward the bridal lounge, where I was supposed to check the lighting timers and emergency access routes. The hallway was empty, save for muted laughter from behind the wall. As I waited for the building supervisor to arrive, I leaned against the cool plaster and tilted my head just enough to hear. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, I truly didn't. But once I heard my name, I stayed still. "She just doesn't fit the vibe," Dahlia was saying. Her voice had the same sing-song condescension it always carried when she talked about someone beneath her, usually while smiling to their face. Marcine chimed in next, laughing too hard for a woman who prided herself on elegance. "I mean, let her stay behind the scenes. As long as she wires the payments on time, I don't care where she sits or doesn't sit." The planner's voice followed. Neutral, professional. "Understood. I'll make sure all adjustments go through me directly." "And keep her out of the couple's shots," Dahlia added. "No one needs to wonder why the help is so overdressed." They all laughed. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just stood there, memorizing every word they had no idea would echo in my mind long after this party was over. By early afternoon, I was back in my suite. I sat down at my desk, removed my shoes, and checked my phone. Notifications buzzed from the family group chat. My uncle had written, "Is Vesna seriously causing issues again? All she ever does is transfer money and make things complicated." An aunt replied, "If she actually cared about family, she'd stop keeping score and just give like the rest of us." Another cousin added a meme, a cartoon woman with a calculator, a messy bun, and steam coming from her ears. Caption: "When the family accountant wants credit for being the bank." I turned the screen over, face down. The rage wasn't loud anymore. It was colder now, settled like frost inside my chest. I opened a blank document on my laptop and titled it, Emotional Expenses. Then I began to list, wedding deposit, $22,000 Dahlia's college tuition, senior year, $1,400 dad's emergency dental, $3,600 mom's car note, $6,200 holiday flights for 3 family members, $4,100 catering bailout last Thanksgiving, $3,200 floral deposit for this event, $5,000. Next to each item, I left a second column blank. Originally meant for what I received in return. It stayed blank. No acknowledgement, no gratitude, no loyalty, just expectation. I closed the file and sent one email. 2. Event coordinator dahliaevents.com. Subject: Billing and future changes, body. Effective immediately, Somerset Haven will not authorize further expenses related to the Ren Sloan engagement without written approval from ownership. This is non-negotiable. VC: No, sincerely. No sign-off, just my initials. I didn't need the performance of formality anymore, just results. They don't see the storm because they think I'm the one bringing the umbrella. But when you stop holding it up, people finally realize who's been keeping them dry. After sending the email to Dahlia's planner the night before, I thought I might sleep easier. Instead, I woke earlier than usual, my head sharp, my body on alert. Something told me this day wouldn't let me coast through the background. It was just past 7 when Ina knocked on my office door with a rigid brown envelope marked confidential in thick block letters. She looked concerned, but said nothing, just placed it on my desk and waited a beat. This came from the coordinator's office, she said. Couriered in this morning. They asked for your review and signature. I gave her a slight nod, thanked her, and waited for her to step out before opening it. Inside was a printed venue contract, thick paper, gold-trimmed headers, meticulous formatting. The event name read, Ren Sloan Engagement Celebration, Somerset Haven Ballroom. I flipped through the pages with a sinking feeling until I landed on page 8. Liability. In the event of non-payment, all financial responsibility falls to the listed venue executive, Ms. Vesna Calder, signature on file. I hadn't signed a thing, not a document, not a letter of intent. Nothing. But there it was. My name, followed by a signature that looked eerily familiar. They'd lifted my digital signature from a previous contract, cut and pasted. I could even tell which year it came from, based on the style of the initials. I stared at it for a long moment. There was no panic this time, no rapid breathing, no rush of blood behind my eyes. Just a chilling sense of clarity. They didn't even need me present to use me. I had become a tool, a name to slot into a checkbox when things got expensive. I stood up, walked over to the printer, and pulled a red ink stamp from the drawer. Void? I pressed it hard against the signature page and felt the fibers give slightly under my palm. I made 3 copies, filed one under unauthorized document activity, and emailed another to our legal counsel marked urgent. By the time I finished documenting the breach, the morning foot traffic had begun downstairs. I left my office and made my way through the east corridor to where Dahlia's entourage was staging another round of candid content. A light ring had been set up in the hallway, and her stylist team flitted around her like a personal wind machine. As I passed behind the camera setup, one of them whispered, loud enough to be heard, "There's the cleaning lady again. I thought we told her to stay out of frame." My footsteps didn't change. I kept walking, pausing only when I reached the planner standing near the buffet table with a clipboard in hand. "Morning," she said, voice clipped. "Is there anything you need me to adjust on the service schedule?" I shook my head. "Not on the schedule. But there's something that needs to be made crystal clear." She looked up. "No further use of my name or this business will be permitted without written authorization. You will receive a revised invoice by noon today, listing only services currently paid for. Any continued setup without confirmation will be treated as trespassing." Her mouth opened slightly. I think we just had a miscommunication." I raised a hand. "This is the last time I'll explain myself." Around us, chatter died down. The stylist's hands froze mid-curl. Someone set a mimosa glass down too quickly, the sound sharp against marble. I walked away before she could answer. That afternoon, I returned to my office, exhausted but stable. I had just poured a second coffee when my phone buzzed. Romy Glass. The name made my spine straighten. The text was short. "You might want to see what your sister submitted last year. Check the Women's Grant Archive under your name." I didn't respond right away. I stared at the message for at least 30 seconds. Then I opened a browser and pulled up the state-funded Women in Business Grant database. Public awards. Names listed alphabetically. I scrolled, eyes scanning fast. There it was. Vesna Calder. Approved recipient. Sponsored by Wren Event Design Group. I never applied for it. And yet someone had submitted a full proposal with my credentials, my EIN, my business registration number, all routed through a third-party event development fund. The grant had been issued for community wellness event planning. Dahlia had hosted a spa-themed brunch that spring and used it as the showcase. The dots connected on their own. I just followed the line. She didn't just borrow my venue. She built her narrative on my name. I leaned back in my chair, the phone still glowing in my hand. They used my name when it suited them. Now I'll show them what that name really means. The glow from my phone screen finally dimmed as I placed it face down beside my keyboard. The weight of what I'd just uncovered, the grant, the forged signature, the calculated theft of identity, didn't hit me like a slap. It settled deeper, in the bones. It didn't burn. It hollowed. By 5:30 the next morning, I was walking the length of the resort ballroom before a single delivery van had pulled up to the side gate. The chandeliers were dimmed to their overnight setting, casting a golden haze across the space that reminded me of early construction days, when all we had were bare bulbs and prayers. I rolled out my laptop at the tech booth and typed the message without pause. To all event vendors and contractors scheduled under the Wren Sloan engagement, please be advised that, effective immediately, Somerset Haven disclaims all financial responsibility for any remaining balances, services, or deliveries not paid directly by the client. Any further work or goods provided without formal clearance from ownership will be at your own risk. I attached the voided contract from the day before, added the event order log with my notes, and blind copied every department lead. Then I clicked send. I didn't wait for replies. I didn't need a round of applause. All I needed was a record. By noon, the calls began. Short, panicked, overlapping. Ina fielded most of them. Her voice stayed even, never raised. "You'll need to contact the client directly for payment." She repeated it with calm finality, like a surgeon calling time of death. The flower vendor wanted to confirm table arrangements, if they were still happening. The cake company threatened to hold delivery unless someone from the Wren family made a down payment. A string quartet canceled outright. The planner pinged Dahlia with at least 7 messages, which, from the copy I was forwarded, went unanswered. I forwarded one polite reply to the whole thread. If they want a $300,000 party, they can pay for a $300,000 party. No more assumptions, no more safety nets they didn't deserve. Later that day, I gathered the full events team in the staff kitchen. Some of them were folding napkins. Others were on their break, sipping iced coffee, laughing softly in the corners. I waited until everyone quieted. "I know this week has been heavier than most," I began, "and you've all handled it with more grace than I could have asked for." They looked at me, waiting. But as of now, no staff is to continue with setup or guest service for this event unless we receive a new contract. Paid in full, upfront. This is no longer a house favor. This is business. No one questioned it. Ina stood beside me, arms crossed, nodding slightly. We weren't just drawing a line. We were building a wall. By late afternoon, I needed a moment to reset, so I scrolled through Instagram while sipping lukewarm tea. My thumb stopped on a story post, one of Marcine's, a picture of a delicate gold bracelet. The caption read, "So touched by Dahlia's gift, she always remembers the details." I blinked once. That bracelet? I had that one shipped. I had hand-selected it 2 months ago, added the note myself. It wasn't extravagant, just something I knew Marcine liked, a style she hadn't bought for herself in years. But she'd assumed Dahlia gave it. Of course she did. Why wouldn't she? Dahlia was the thoughtful one, the favorite, the one who showed up with flair while I stayed quiet in the background, covering costs. I didn't react. I didn't comment. I didn't correct her. I just hit mute story. Let them keep believing whatever helps them sleep. I wasn't here to rewrite their fantasy. I stood, poured the cold tea into the sink, and brewed a fresh cup. As it steeped, I opened a new draft email. 2. Planera Dahlia Wren Events Subject. Final Access Notice Body. As of 6 p.m. today, access to Somerset Haven's main ballroom will be restricted unless written confirmation of full payment is received. This is non-negotiable. VC. It was time for consequences, not conversations. That evening, I walked back through the main corridor. Dahlia's crew was rehearsing a champagne pour video for her soft arrival. Staff stood awkwardly, waiting to see if I'd allow it. I didn't stop them, not yet. But I didn't smile either. I passed silently, pausing only to glance at the entry arch now lit up in soft white. They thought they were about to walk through their moment. What they didn't know was that the moment no longer belonged to them. You wanted me invisible. I'll give you something unforgettable instead. By sunrise, I was already dressed and pacing my office, waiting for the printer to spit out what Romy had sent overnight. I'd barely slept, no surprise, but my thoughts were crystal clear. The silence had gone stale. It was time to bring receipts. The document was only 6 pages, but it was enough. At the top, California Women in Business Grant Application, awarded 2022. Beneath that, the name Vesna Calder, listed as founder and sole operator of Somerset Haven. The business plan was mine, cut and pasted from an old LinkedIn write-up I'd nearly forgotten existed. The financials? Pulled from public data I'd used for a speaking panel years ago. Even the mission statement was identical. And the contact email? Belonged to Dahlia. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just slid the printout into a folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked to the ballroom. The room was already buzzing when I arrived. Vendors were hauling in crates of stemware, flower arrangements, silk runners. Champagne buckets lined the tables, and Dahlia stood in the center of it all like a director on her opening night, micromanaging the placement of a floral arch. I waited until the planner looked up and spotted me. She gave a tentative smile, already unsure where she stood after the day before. "Can we help you with something?" she asked, her tone too sweet to be sincere. I didn't answer her. I walked straight to Dahlia, who was holding a clipboard and barking something about rose petals. "Dahlia," I said. Calm. Firm. She turned, half smiling. That dropped quickly when she saw what was in my hand. I opened the folder and handed her the document. "This ring a bell?" I asked. She glanced at it, then back at me. "Ves, that's old. I didn't think you'd care. You didn't think I'd care that you submitted a grant under my name? Using my credentials? Claiming to be the founder of a business I built from nothing?" She laughed. Not convincingly. "It was just for the paperwork. You weren't using it." I stared at her, wondering how someone could talk like that and still sleep through the night. "You lied," I said. "On a government-funded application, using my name, you not only stole credit, you cashed the benefits." "It's not that serious," she snapped. "You always make everything dramatic." That was when her voice raised, and people turned. The planner, the decorator, the sound tech. They all paused, waiting for what would follow. "I'm not the one who faked a resume," I said. "You didn't just borrow my name. You impersonated me, publicly, on record." Her eyes flickered. The air between us cooled instantly. Dahlia's voice dropped, but not enough that others couldn't hear. "Let's not pretend people actually like you, Vesna. They tolerate you because you pay for things. You think they come here for your company? Please." Silence stretched. Then she added, louder, like she wanted an audience for this part. "Take away your money, and what do you have left? Nobody. That's what. You walk around acting like you're better than everyone, like you're some moral compass. But without your money, you're just sad and alone." A waiter, mid-pour, froze. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. I took a breath. It didn't shake. I looked at her for exactly 3 seconds. Then I folded the grant document in neat thirds, walked over to the nearby trash bin, and dropped it inside. "Thanks for clearing that up," I said evenly. I turned to the planner. Start making calls, I told her. You'll need to find a new venue for the rest of this event. She blinked. What? You heard me. We're done here. I didn't wait for a reply. As I walked toward the doors, voices behind me stirred. Confused. Curious. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need validation. My steps were enough. Somewhere near the arch, I heard someone whisper, "She owns this place? And they spoke to her like that?" I kept walking. There was nothing more to prove. You mocked what I built because you knew you could never build it yourself. After I walked out of that ballroom, I didn't go back to my office. I didn't need to. What needed to be said had already been carved into silence. The building knew. The walls remembered. My name was in the mortar, in the fire codes, in the liability coverage. I didn't need a title card or a mic to prove ownership, but proof was coming anyway. That afternoon, Somerset Haven's grand ballroom turned into a parade of velvet gowns, designer shoes, and performative hugs. Guests arrived in waves. A pair of bloggers were stationed near the entrance snapping photos. A local event magazine sent someone to live-stream Newport Glam, Central Coast Chic, or whatever label they were selling that day. Delia greeted people like royalty. She laughed too loud, held her champagne too high, called everyone babe and my angel. The wedding planner scurried around her like a satellite on a timer, eyes darting toward staff whose expressions were already tight with confusion. Thatcher's parents arrived just before 4. His mother wore a navy sheath dress and pearls that probably had their own insurance policy. His father shook hands with the valet, like they'd known each other for years. Champagne was offered. Dahlia gave her rehearsed welcome speech, not a single mention of the venue. I watched it unfold from the back of the room, standing just behind a curtain near the service door. I had told the AV team exactly when to cue the video. They followed the instruction like it was gospel. At 4:17 p.m., the house lights dimmed. A hush fell. The screen came alive with glittering gold titles, "Celebrating a Legacy of Love." But after 10 seconds, the footage glitched, then cut to a new clip. Raw. Vertical phone video. A shaky frame. No filters. No slow-motion transitions. Dahlia's voice, unmistakable, pierced the room. "Kick that beggar out before she ruins the aesthetic." Gasps. Audible ones. Someone dropped a fork. The video played only 7 more seconds. No names, no context. Just a moment. A very real, very unpolished truth. Then the screen went black. A beat of silence. Then I stepped out from behind the curtain. I wasn't dressed like a guest. I wore what I always did when the stakes were real. A tailored black blazer, simple heels, hair pulled back. No jewelry except the keycard clipped to my waist. My badge of authority. I walked to the mic in the center of the stage. I didn't rush. Let them see me. Let them feel the quiet shift. "I'm sorry for the interruption," I said. "My name is Vesna Calder. I am the founder and sole owner of Somerset Haven." The room held its breath. "This venue was offered in good faith. That faith was violated." I let the silence land. "The business you're standing in was built, brick by brick, contract by contract, by someone you just heard referred to as a nuisance, a problem, a blemish." My eyes found Dahlia, standing frozen beside Thatcher, her face pale but her jaw still locked. I didn't look away. "Effective immediately, the Ren Sloan engagement event is canceled. Guests are welcome to stay for refreshments, but this facility will no longer support this performance." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others looked around, unsure if it was theater or truth. A woman near the catering table set her glass down and started clapping. A man near the AV booth followed. I didn't ask for applause. I wasn't there for redemption. I was there for correction. Thatcher looked from me to Dahlia, his mouth slightly open. His mother leaned toward him and whispered, "You knew she owned it?" Dahlia said nothing. I stepped down from the platform and walked out through the main exit. As I passed the hallway, I heard a whisper from one of the servers, young, maybe 20, holding a tray of untouched shrimp skewers. "I'm glad someone finally said it," she murmured. I gave her a nod. Just once. Outside, the sun was slipping behind the trees. The wind picked up slightly, pushing the linen banners at the edge of the terrace. For once, I wasn't walking away quietly. They gave her the spotlight, I gave her the floor, and then took it back. The air was still sharp the next morning, the kind that slides in under doorframes and lingers even with the windows shut. I sat alone in my suite, a mug of coffee slowly cooling on the windowsill beside me, watching the staff below begin resetting the property like nothing monumental had happened the day before. No sirens, no lawsuits, no press conference, just silence. My phone buzzed once against the glass, and I didn't have to guess who it was. I picked it up, glanced at the screen. Dad. I didn't open the message right away. I took one more sip of coffee, cold, bitter, but familiar, before unlocking it. It didn't have to go this far. Your sister's devastated. Your mother's embarrassed. Let's not make this worse. No? Are you okay? No. I saw what happened. No? I'm sorry we let it get here. Just, don't ruin what's left. I read it again. Let it sit. And then, quietly, I deleted it. The walk across the lawn was quiet. Most of the vendors were gone. Just a few carts being wheeled back to the supply shed, the last of the staging lighting being packed. The floral arch had been broken down into buckets, roses stripped of their decorative wire, hydrangeas browning at the edges. I passed by the reception hall's entrance and spotted a folded napkin on the floor. Ivory linen, embroidered in silver thread with the initials DW. Dahlia's signature branding. For a moment, I considered picking it up, but I didn't. Let her come back for her things. I'd carried too much of them already. I continued around the garden and into the west wing where Ina was waiting. She handed me a manila envelope, her expression unreadable. It's from the Sloane's side, she said. Partial refund, under Dahlia's account. No note, just the receipt. I took it, looked it over, then walked to the office and signed it without a word. That's the last check they'll ever cash with my name attached to it. Ina didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She understood. The day moved slowly after that. No drama, no confrontation, just recalibration. The kind that seeps into your bones after you've stopped trying to earn peace and started defining it on your own terms. That evening, Somerset Haven hosted a quiet vow renewal. Nothing grand, just 30 or so guests. A couple in their 60s celebrating 4 decades of marriage. It was the kind of gathering I loved most. Understated, meaningful, free from spectacle. I stayed at the back of the room, leaning against the far wall with a ginger ale in hand. No one knew who I was, and for the first time in a while, that felt like a gift. During the ceremony, a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, ran past me chasing after a bubble wand. She paused, looked up at me with wide eyes and said, "Are you the owner, lady?" I smiled. "Yeah, I am." She grinned back. "Cool. I want to be like you." And just like that, something that had been clenched tight in my chest for years loosened. Not because I needed to be admired, but because someone had finally seen me without me having to announce myself. When the guests left and the chairs were folded away, I went back to my office one last time that night. I didn't check the invoices. I didn't read any vendor updates. I sat down and opened a new file. Blank, quiet. Just my name at the top. Vesna Calder, personal. I hit record and let my voice carry the rest. I used to think love meant sacrifice. Give until it hurts. Give until it works. But now I know love without respect is just performance, and I won't audition anymore. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and turned off the light. Some people learn love through praise. Some through silence. And some of us had to learn that walking away wasn't cruel. It was survival. They lost their sponsor. I found my voice. Before I go, I want to say something not just as the woman who built Somerset Haven, but as someone who had to unlearn the idea that love only counts when it hurts. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. Being needed is not the same as being loved, and giving until you're empty doesn't make you noble. It makes you invisible. Sometimes setting a boundary isn't about pushing others away. It's about finally choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else first. I know many of you listening have carried burdens in silence. Maybe you've been the quiet one, the fixer, the peacemaker, the person everyone calls when something breaks. But let me ask you, when was the last time someone asked how you're really doing without needing something in return? If this story spoke to something in you, if it made you feel seen, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't connect, that's okay too. Let me know what didn't sit right and what kind of story you need to hear. We grow when we share. If this video touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming, real ones, raw, imperfect, human. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop shrinking for people who were never meant to see your full size. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next story.